Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to thementhatcanproject.com to find out more. The Man That Can Project podcast, a podcast empowering career-driven men to live more fulfilling lives. We are here to challenge your beliefs, redefine success, and talk about the important stuff in a relatable way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. My name's Lachlan Stuart. Let's get into it. Welcome to episode 516 of the Man That Can Project podcast. Today, we're back with another beauty. We've got two incredible looking men across the screen from me. I wish we could do it in person, but technology makes it just as fun online. Today, we're going to be talking money, it's a topic that many men think about, or many people in general think about a lot. Sometimes it keeps you awake at night. Other times you get excited by the prospect of having more of it, but so many people still don't know how to use it to get what they want from life. We stress about it, but we don't learn some very cool principles or understand it to make our lives better, our relationships better, and our health better. So today, I was very fortunate. Paul and I were actually talking at the gym 2 weeks ago, and he's like, I just met this guy, Terry. You got to meet Terry. You got to listen to his podcast too. He's quite brilliant. And both of the gentlemen have great awareness around money and deal with money day in, day out, which is why I know this is going to be an incredible one. We'll be touching on points around having open conversations about money with your partner, how our past experiences can shape our money beliefs, and so much more in this episode. But we've got Terry from Cashflow Co. So their goal is to maximize your return on life by making smarter decisions with your money. Beautiful. And then we've got Paul, a mortgage broker from Loan Market, who is very, very curious and passionate about helping you manage your money and get your finances down or your debt down on your property. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So
thanks for having us, Lucky.
Let's hit it hard. Let's go straight into the big question that a lot of men are thinking. Why is it crucial for couples to have open conversations about money?
Shall I go, Terry? I think I just see people coming into us every day, every week, and they're often on just completely different pages about money. They've got either you've got one dominant person that handles all the money, and the other person sort of hides in the background, or you've got one person that just happily spends the money and doesn't listen to the other. And I think a lot of the time that can cause just big stresses in a household. We ask people, are you a spender or a saver? And it's never really one or the other. There's hardcore fires out there who really save money and are really good at it. But when they clash with the spender, it becomes a real frustration point in a relationship and can really send a relationship off course.
What are your thoughts on that, Terry?
Oh, 100% agree, mate. It's probably, it's interesting when we started the Cashflow Co., we really didn't start thinking that we were going to become very well experienced and well versed in understanding the problem that Paul's just very effectively articulated there. But that's essentially what we've actually had to do, is to solve that problem, to help people make better decisions with their money, particularly with couples. You've got two people. If you've got different ideas about money, it can be very hard because I get this image of like two people literally just, I think it's like a cartoon. There's like two donkeys and they're pulling in different directions towards different haystacks. And then it's like, if we just had one donkey pulling one direction, you could have your hay and then we'll go towards my direction. It feels a lot like that at times. And that's the norm, right? So look, if you're listening to this, don't judge yourself for that. It's just very, very difficult to talk about something that it's been taboo to talk about. It's not a norm, is it?
Is there a right time to start having that conversation? I remember when I first started dating my wife, she obviously out-earned me a buck. I was in a very different place in my life back then, and I never felt comfortable talking about finances. And, when she would travel a lot, sometimes because I was just getting by, she would help me out to travel overseas and stuff like that. But we still never spoke about finances. And I felt as a man, I really struggled with not being able to contribute in the way that I believed I should be. And it wasn't until maybe 4 years into our relationships, which seems a short time now, but in the grand scheme, that feels like a long time to not really talk about where the hell we're at with finances, whether we are one of those savers or we are a spender. So is there something from, I guess, for both of you that you've seen as probably an ideal time to do that, or how you would even go about doing that?
I think that's why we started this, to be honest. When I came across Terry's work, something popped up on Instagram and I sort of thought, well, that just hits the nail on the head, is that people just don't have a time. They just don't get ready to think about it. They sort of half come together when they want to buy a property. But it can already, of course, frustrations by that point and arguments by that point. So I think that's what I really liked about Terry's process and the training that they're putting out there, is it's just start to have a conversation. It's not, and what I was always, I think you've just nailed it there, Lockie, is that I'm always of that idea that you've got to be saving, got to be saving, got to be saving. But for some people, that's not their idea. And that's what Terry's piece jumped out at me, was like, it's just get on the same page. Have a structure. That's probably something better for Terry to talk to, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the insight you're getting to there, Paul, is, very, very simple. Two brains solving one problem works way better than one brain solving one problem and another solving the same problem without any communication. And so it's so easy to feel like you're doing different things. But coming back to the answer to your problem or your question, when is the right time? I think once you know that this is someone that you want to invest more in the relationship with, it's not an irreversible decision to manage your money together. There's many ways that you can do it, and I think in some ways we've been led a little bit astray by what I would call overly rigid kind of prescriptions. Just read my kind of plan on a page, follow what I say. And usually what ends up happening is the person who's engaged with money reads the book, froths the book, and then goes to the other person, shoves the book down the other person's throat and says, do this. We got to do it exactly this way. This is the only way. And not to point fingers, but anyone that says they've got the only money guide you'll ever need, it's kind of leading you astray a little bit, because that person's never met you. How would they know that? And so you are the first time you've ever happened, and so is your partner. So it's really up to you guys to figure out how you want to work it together. And I think that's exactly what Paul's pointing out is, we're like, let's play the game your way. There is no right or wrong here. There's how you guys want to do it together. And wealth isn't money and money isn't wealth. Wealth is having more of what you value. So you want to start the conversation with, what do you guys value? What do you care about? Because money's role to play is to get you more of that. But if you start with money and these prescriptions of X%, X%, X% over here, that's actually not that compelling. Start with values, I reckon. It's easy to have that conversation then. Okay, now how much money do you have? I think it's better and a safer place to start.
It's almost like it's not creating a game out of it, but taking the stress out of it by creating a game out of it. Like, make a way that money improves the process of money, or the process of saving, or the process of getting to what you want with money needs to be a team effort. So you've got to get into the same game to do it.
Yeah.
So with that, I guess from what I'm taking from that is, then if there are so many money experts out there on the internet, and it can be quite overwhelming, one person saying, do this, invest in Bitcoin, the other person saying, save, then the other person saying, have no debt. And it can be quite overwhelming. So what you're suggesting the best place to start would be is just sit down and start having a conversation, identify which one saw more appealing to you, and then navigate that with your partner.
I think so, right? Like, if you just set money aside for a second, because I think the world wants us to conflate those two things. And I'll make the same point. Wealth isn't money and money isn't wealth. Wealth is having more of what you value. Money is just a vehicle for moving wealth from one place to another. And so when you're talking about managing money and optimizing for money, how do you know how to optimize if you don't know what you're optimizing for? So why don't you start with what you're optimizing for? What problem are you actually solving? Are you trying to create more flexibility as a family? Do you want to spend more time with the kids? Is that important to you? Or do you want to have more adventures with the kids? And what does that look like? Does that mean that you want to pick up every 6 months and you want to travel overseas? Okay, what kind of jobs, what kind of opportunities, what kind of incomes, what sort of investments might you need to be able to support that? Now that stuff becomes pretty compelling to the person who otherwise couldn't really give a shit. You see what I mean? Like, because you reconfigure and configure your finances according to what job it has to do for you. But if you don't know what job it has to do for you, then of course the person who doesn't feel like a money person isn't going to be interested.
Love that. How do our experiences and the upbringings that we've had to date shape that? Because I am a saver, definitely, because I've always believed money doesn't grow on trees. If you got to save for a rainy day, all of those sorts of things. And my wife definitely likes to spend a little bit more than I do. So I've noticed in the beginning, before I started becoming aware of this, how frustrated I used to get. I was always like, come on, you spending that, I could have had a year off work for that. Like, what are we doing here? And now I've sort of become a bit more aware of it and understand it's more than just the numbers in the bank account. It can mean we're buying experiences, or, it does bring you a lot of joy, money. Don't get me wrong. I do enjoy what it can bring me. But how do people who are sitting here listening, they go, okay, I want to shift how I think about money. I want to shift my relationship with money. What would that look like for an individual?
For an individual or a couple?
A couple. A couple individuals.
Yeah. So I guess if we've had the conversation we've just been discussing, we know what the money's for and we want to shift that relationship. If that is really, really important to both of you, I think the next thing to do is to find out what the opportunity cost or otherwise the cost of inaction is. And it's an interesting conversation to have between couples, but it's where I see couples get the most empathy for each other and really connect on what they're trying to do together, the life they're trying to build. You hear that saying all the time, we got so busy making a living, we didn't make a life. If you actually sit down and ask yourself this question, why is this so important to you? Like, what's the cost of doing nothing? What's the cost of staying the same? And really what I'm trying to hit on here is that humans are so motivated. They're much more motivated to move away from pain than they are towards pleasure. So as compelling as it is to have a clear vision together, and it's very important for direction, you don't just need direction, you need purpose. And the way you tap into purpose is pain. What is the painful situation that you want to avoid in order to move towards that thing? And if you have those two things together, it's almost like you've got two magnets, right? One magnet behind you that's repelling you, pushing you away from the pain, and another magnet that's pulling you forward. And so for me, if you get that right, what it'll do is it'll emotionally connect two people to their money. And this is, I think, where it's counterintuitive, right? Most of the time you go into money and finance, and Paul, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. The way we're educated and conditioned with money is you take the emotion out of it. We believe it's very important to put the emotion right into it in the beginning and then think logically about how you want that thing that you're emotionally connected to. And if you think about it, everyone talks about Warren Buffett as the best money manager on the planet, right? But Warren Buffett's most lucrative investment, Berkshire Hathaway, do you know what it was? Can I swear on this podcast, Lachlan?
Yeah, go for it. Spice it up.
It was a big fuck you to people that tried to screw him over in business. It was a very emotional decision. I'm going to buy that. I'm going to prove you guys wrong. And I'm going to become the best money manager that ever existed. 100% emotional decision. 100%. So anyone that says take the emotion out of money to do better with it, I really don't think understands people. And it's actually people that manage money. It's not money that we need to worry about. It's how we work with money.
I think that's a bit it's almost like you, Lockie, and Amy at the start, and Terry, they're coming together with it's the emotion of it, but bring your emotions together to find an emotional goal. Like Lockie, I've same thing. I'm a bit of a saver, and Claire stays and looks after the kids, and so she's not involved in the money side of it, and I want her to be involved in the money side of it. So, if you don't come to the same emotional point of why you're doing it, then you've got no way to move forward. And I think sometimes buying a house is one of the times that couples come together for it. And it's the first time. And it can become a frictional time because one of them really wants to buy a house, one of them really wants to save the money, or they're both wanting to save the money and they've both got to change their habits for it. But that's one of just the first emotional reason that they get their money involved and start that journey together. And it's, just trying to find a plan that they can work together to come to the right outcome for themselves.
Speaking of property then, why, from your perspective, Paul, is it important for you to help people pay down their loan as quickly as possible?
I'm not paying it.
Yeah, well, not you paying it, Dan.
Oh, Jesus.
It's like I help people get their houses and then I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah, see it. We're done.
Moving's the worst thing in the world. No, it's obviously paying down debt. You pay down debt from after-tax dollars. The Australian dream is to own your own home, and there's an element of that you just can't get away from, because once you pay off your home, you can live for free. You don't have to pay rent. You've got to pay for repairs and pay for rates and whatever, but you can live for free, and that gives you a level of financial independence that you can stop working at some time in the future. Paying down your loan faster than the minimum amount can just save you tens of thousands of dollars over the life of the loan. Anybody who's still in a fixed rate loan now needs to look at what it's going to cost them when they come off a fixed rate loan and start paying that now, because they're paying 2% and they can start paying 6%. They're going to get 4% ahead on their loan over the next couple of years just by making those additional repayments. So our thing is that we help clients, but we also track their interest rates on their loans. So we've built a system in the background that we can actually see what we predict their interest rate is, and we can look at when they're paying too much. So we can just try and fine tune it, get them to keep overpaying and pay down the debt as quickly as possible.
It's an interesting one. When you mentioned this, when we were speaking about it last week, I never really thought about it. There was a book that I read recently as well, where he was all about, getting your debt down as quickly as possible as well, for that exact reason. And then obviously having Matt Lank on last week, where he talks about, obviously, he doesn't have much debt as well. A lot of the time in my life when I've been looking at how do I create wealth, a lot of it is based around debt. And so now I've sort of started looking at other ways to do that, and the importance of it, especially over, if you've got a 30-year loan, it can save you quite a bit of capital. And it's almost like one of those things now where what are the things that you're just blowing money on without even really thinking about it? For example, for me, I had every streaming subscription under the sun, and you can only watch one at one time, right? You're hooked on one season for a month, and then you're watching. So I'm paying $40 extra dollars a month on something else that I could have been paying off on my home loan. So I started looking at all of those things and putting it in the home loan account as well, purely because of what you said a number of weeks ago.
Yeah, look, it can have a massive benefit. There's definitely arguments to having debt, but not home loan debt, so investment loan debt. By having multiple properties that over time they go up in value, and in 20 years' time, then hopefully double in value, you can sell them off and clear down the debt and have money left after. But the home loan is the key. The home loan, paying that home loan off and getting rid of it, gives you that financial independence. But yeah, just small extras can make a big difference as you go along.
What are your thoughts, Terry, around paying down debt and debt in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'll come back to what we said before. Like, it really is horses for courses, because let's say, for example, I've got a better opportunity than paying down my debt outside. So the extra money that I'm putting into the loan, I can make more, or I can do more with it elsewhere. And that isn't just a financial return. So, for example, if I do have a business, it's $1 against my home loan versus $1 in my business. If I can get like a 30 or 40% return on that dollar, then I can increase my personal income to pay the debt off sooner. So it's really just a kind of sequencing thing. But let's say, for example, and this has happened, we've got a family who they ran a business down here in Victoria, and their kids are chronically ill. So they are acutely aware of the value of time over everything else. And one of the best financial decisions I ever saw get made was them deciding once and for all that they were going to actually act on what they always wanted to do and make it actually happen, to move, shut the business down, move north, take their girls up to the sun, up where you are, Paul, because they wanted to live every day as much as they possibly could with their girls, sun and surf, and just have that adventure at the time. Now, I know that's cost them financially in that short term, but what's the point of money if it's not improving your life? It's not useful anyway. Now, they weren't short on money, and they're not going to go broke. They're far from it. And I would say that's one of the best decisions I made. So you might say, oh, he could have paid extra off on the home loan during that time. I'm like, and trade the best years he's going to have with his girl's life. So Paul's 100% correct. Like, you can reduce your stress and all that sort of stuff. But again, if you come back and you say, but what is wealth to us? It helps you make those decisions, and it helps you have, I think, conviction in those decisions, because you're not following a prescription. You're saying that's what's best for me, and I know it. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I really enjoy that. I had a gentleman on before who's a big branding expert, and he does the same thing. He's like, I work 6 hours a day, always finish at the same time, because what's important to me is dropping my kids to school, picking them up, having time with my family. After that is I could make a bucket load more money, but I make enough money in the 6 hours that I do a day, and I don't work weekends. And that's how he's designed his life. And I think that's a sort of another good point to reiterate, Terry, just understanding and getting clear on what purpose money serves you, what it is actually giving to you. And I have spoken to Paul about it when I started my business in 2014. The goal was always I wanted to be able to have flexibility to travel with my wife, and also if I ever become a dad, to be able to be as hands-on as I choose to be, not be stuck, which is why I chose to not be employed anymore. And there's pros and cons with all of these things, but that's what works for me. And some people still don't understand why I chose to do that. However, I don't really care. It's working well for me, and that's what, going back to your point, Terry, so that's awesome too. It makes me feel validated now. I'll go back to everyone and share this podcast with them. Like,
mate, I do the exact same thing. I walked away from everybody's dream job.
Yeah.
People are like, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. Yeah.
Can we talk about that then? Because there are people who will be listening to this who are in what is perceived as a dream job, and they may be thinking, this isn't giving me what I thought it would give me in the first place. How did you come to terms with the fact that you wanted to walk away, and what did that look like, and how did that play out?
Yeah, so I spent the better part of 10 years in elite sport coaching, coaching the best athletes. If you made a list of the best athletes over the last 15 to 20 years, I've probably worked with them or worked with someone who worked with them. And you know what? I loved that job when I was young. Really did. Really enjoyed it. Got so much out of it. Understood literally everything I understand now, and what do I apply to money through a human behavior lens comes from my background in coaching and understanding how big things get done, how big accomplishments actually happen, and how achievement actually works. And so I don't regret that for a second. But there was a period of time where I started to realize, hang on, I'm actually moving closer to a period of time where I don't want to be picking up every few years and chasing the next tracksuit. And, I got, job offers in Ireland and England and all over Australia all the time. It's a great career when you're young. It's a horrible career as you age, because when you're coaching in sport, particularly where I was with physical performance, what ends up happening is as you get older and more experienced, you actually become more expendable. Because you're getting further and further away from the athletes you're coaching in terms of age, and younger people. It's just a supply and demand thing. Younger and younger people who are more qualified than you now because they've spent more time at uni are nipping at your heels, and they're like, I'll work twice as hard for less. So all the economics work against you. And so what you end up doing, and I just looked ahead at the people in front of me and I said, well, the people that survive, unfortunately, they become political animals. They understand how to manage and manipulate people, power, perception. And usually what ends up happening, and I would say that fully at least 1/3 of my colleagues had broken marriages. Now, I just got together with my wife and I had this realization, and I realized I'd made her move for the second time in 3 years. And I'm like, is this what it's going to be? Am I just going to keep saying, hey, we got to move again, pick up the kids, let's go? Because I've got to have this job. I need the tracksuit. I just got to have the tracksuit because I don't know myself without it. And now I'm not saying everyone's like this, but what I'm saying is this is the pressures that people face. And when I looked ahead, I actually don't want that. I don't like it. And the thing that I value, much like yourself, Lockie, is autonomy, freedom, creativity. I was super innovative as a coach. I was always looking at new and better ways to do things and actually understanding how to look at things from different angles. And, sometimes that was appreciated. And sometimes you're in those environments, people are just like, hey, mate, just think like the rest of us and stop rocking the bus. Stop rocking the, I don't know what the expression is there, but like, just calm down. And I'm like, oh, I thought this was elite. I thought we were like going for the best, But anyway, so there's a point where you realize you're an entrepreneur, and it's because I just kept making myself redundant in every role. I would build systems, and those systems would eventually allow me to do my job better than I could if I was always just me. And I'd build these systems and I'd make myself redundant, and then I get bored. And that wasn't seen as a strength; it was seen as a weakness. So I kept pushing for more and more challenge, more responsibility, and they were like, "No, look, we sort of have you pegged. Like, stay there." So for me, I was like, "Listen, wealth for me is not having my day scheduled 8 months ago by somebody else from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. Wealth for me is to be able to get up and own that calendar. I still love coaching, and that's exactly what we do, doing what we do now. And I love helping people accomplish things. But I had to ask myself the question: is the biggest team is the most important thing I'm here for to help someone who's already rich run 10 seconds faster or get on the field 1 week earlier? Is that the best thing I can do here with my skills, with my talents, with my abilities? And at a certain point, I was like, this is risky. Every year that I stay here, the risk compounds. Only a very narrow subset of people actually know and understand what I do. And so I need to get a broader skill set. That kind of led me down a different path.
Love that. What about for you, Paulie? Like, probably a similar question. You were mentioning off air before that you changed careers. You were doing sound engineering in that space. What then, I guess, drew you to wanting to make a change in your career?
Oh, I think it goes back to that. Like your conversation with Matt on the previous podcast was just, you get on a journey, and is it going to achieve what you want from it? Your success that you want from it? Are you going to get to the level that you want to be at? Both of you have actually talked about changing the emotional journey almost earlier on in your lives. And when we're dealing with first home buyers, it's quite often it's the start of their journey. They're potentially in their early 20s. They haven't gone on that path of changing a course or doing something different. They're just on that journey of trying to buy a home or start that career or get onto the first rung in the ladder. For me, changing careers was it was just one of those things that I was involved in a business that just didn't exist anymore, pretty much. So building recording studios was a big thing. But then all of a sudden it wasn't. People could make music on their iPads or their iMacs or whatever it was at the time. It was 20-something years ago. So, and I fell into real estate first. And then after falling into real estate, I moved across to the finance side. A bit more Rain Man for everybody. Doing our maths at Finance Centre. I worked out that I was probably the finance guy. But that was, that's just as one of those steps. It's one of those steps in your career as you move along, trying to lift yourself up to the next level of probably, next level of income, or for as Terry said, just that emotional step that's creating a path, your next path to go along in life, I think.
That's probably why I got people ask me, Lockie, you mentioned before that people ask you why you did that and that sort of thing. And I still see people from, from my previous career, and they kind of just look at me really weird. Like, how'd you get into finance? And it was actually finance and understanding finance and investing and really, really understanding it deeply that gave me that opportunity to walk away, try something new, take a risk, bet on myself and build something. And I'm like, I want everyone to know this, and I hate the fact that I had to learn it then. I want my kids to know this. Like part of the sort of a secondary sort of gain of this for me is that there's a body of work that we've created on our podcast that hopefully my kids stumble across one day, and I won't be telling them; they'll just be listening. And God forbid if something ever happens to me, it's there for them, you know, because I just wish somebody sat me down and said, here's how the world works, mate. And if you want the world to work better for you, then learn this game and game it. Because it's created immense opportunity for me in my life in terms of those little choices that I wanted. You can reconfigure things, and it's actually shocking how fast you can make this happen if you actually do understand the ins and outs of this for yourself. And it's not at all as difficult. Paul, hopefully you'll back me up on this. It's not at all as difficult as people make out. The acronyms, the long words, all that sort of stuff, it's all just a lot of smokescreen, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, definitely. It's funny you've come back to the game, making a game out of it, because we started with that the game of the emotion of getting a couple on side with each other to play the game, to work the finance to their best, to then create the outcomes that they want. It's definitely getting on the same path. Two people working together to get better at it.
It's cool to see that you can sort of put that into place. And what you were saying there, Terry, it's like you hope that your kids, you come home from work one day, or you're working from home by the looks of it, but you come home one day and the kids have got the podcast on the TV or on the wireless, not the wireless anymore, that's my age, on the iPhone or iPod, just listening to it. And that's very similar to myself, because it's money is a component. So if we look at like health, wealth, and relationships being those three core buckets, as Maddie was talking about, Paul, that we can educate on and we should be getting taught about from a young age. All I'm wanting to do is be 1% better than my dad was. And I hope that my children are that 1% better. And that's by having conversations like this, providing different perspectives, chasing after what we want, and proving to people that, I guess, how society worked 20 years ago or a couple of generations ago, we can now change that. What's normal, money beliefs, what's considered the norm. Even, I guess my relationships, one thing I struggled with was my wife out-earned me for 6-7 years. I've only just got her, thankfully. And it's been a battle. But, for so long. And that was really hard to take once again, as a man and someone who wanted to be the protector and provider. But the moment that I just was like, it is what it is, we're working together collectively. What's my role in it? What do I want to get out of it? I became comfortable and just focused on what I needed to do, which has grown the business, has grown the podcast. And I just hope that people continue listening to this, because as a byproduct of learning from you guys, Paul and Terry, about money, and then going down the rabbit hole of how can I be better here? And then from me around mindset or health, it's like, how can I be better here? You're going to be a better dad. You're going to be a better mate. You're going to live a better life. And it's not that complicated. You just got to invest that time in there and really start taking responsibility for that.
I say that this is the cheapest skill you'll ever buy with your time and your money, because if you think about how many decisions you make every day that involve money, and then you future pace that across the rest of your life, and then you spread the cost of the time and the money that it would take you to get good at this, you'll see you'll never get anything cheaper, because you learn it once, you benefit from it for the rest of your life. If you think about different professions, like if you're in IT or something like that, you're always having to update the knowledge and stay abreast of things. This is one game that doesn't change. It's the same thing. The principles stay the same. The way you configure it for you is very personal to you. So once you start to get that, it's one of the best investments you'll ever make, that one. I don't know if you'd add anything to that, Paul, but I just think when people say to me, oh, you spend money to figure out how to make money, I'm like, you're not getting it.
I agree. I think, I potentially come from an older generation of, from my parents were very much save, to a point where, they're now, old, care homes, old. And all their life savings and everything is just pouring into care homes, which, if they didn't have money, the state would pay for them in the UK. So it's starting to change the mindset of how we think about money and what it does. And that's probably the first step for people. It's just coming back to that idea of let's get on the same thing. If somebody's a spender and somebody's a saver, then the saver's got to move as well as the spender. It doesn't have to be just the spender that moves. It's got to be the saver that moves as well. If you're going to come together as a team, it's not my way or the highway. It's got to be, it's got to be an enjoyable process. You've got to maybe game it out, as we've said, and just get rid of that friction around it, really, which is what I see so much. And it causes so many breakups.
You know what's interesting about that, Paul, is that the differences that people perceive amongst themselves are actually strengths, and they're actually gifts, because we'll see this a lot in a macro. There'll be someone who's very macro, maybe future focused, and like thinking very much about the future. And then there's someone who's like uber present. And actually, I just ran into one of our guys just here before, and she's like, "Wow, he's just been so present focused." But now, actually, what we're doing is we're now actually collaborating around those different views, right? So when you're making your financial decisions, it's a really good thing to have somebody who's understanding the present and all the detail really, really closely, to have somebody collaborating out with who's like, and also we need to be moving in this direction. But I think because everybody perceives that we need to be the same, they think, oh, it doesn't work for us and we're doomed. Those differences for me, they're complementary. They're not competitive. And if you can reframe that and understand it and give both of you a common cause that's much bigger than our differences, then you can actually use those differences. My wife, for example, I'd say she makes much better life investments than I do. So she makes quite smart purchases on things that save us time, make our lives easier. But if I just stuck to my conditioning, I'd say, well, why do we need the $200,000 or the $2,000 Thermomix? And she's like, well, because it's going to make everyone's life a lot easier forever. And I'm like, it's $2,000. And she's like, yes, and it's going to be used so much. And it's the cheapest thing. That's exactly what I just said about finance, right?
Yeah.
And she'll find ways to make our lives in the house kind of work better. And I've learned to really respect that, just like she's learned to really understand and respect how I'm thinking about the kids and what kind of school, what kind of opportunities we want to be able to invest in for them, and what we have to do now to make that happen. Some of the opportunity costs that we have to pay to be able to earn or pay the price to be able to make that stuff happen. So as we have those conversations, every time you have one of these conversations and it's not my way or your way, it's how do we get the most out of each other's strengths? What you do is you teach yourself that conversations about money can be constructive. And as that happens, what you start to do is you expand that sphere of competence and confidence and comfort. And so you can make your comfort zone much bigger than whatever chaos happens for you. When that chaos happens, you can deal with it so much more effectively, and you can respond instead of reacting.
I am never going to live it down, not letting my wife get a Thermomix.
Oh, no. Sorry, mate.
But I like
Highly recommend.
I like the idea of a roadmap to the Thermomix. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Roadmap
Mate,
to it.
Yeah. That's my thing, right? What's the plan for this and how does it fit in? And then we're looking at it saying, okay, so if we're going to spend $2,000 on this now, which goal are we going to compromise on in the short term? Which of these other goals are you actually willing to move from? Because I think that's the conversation that doesn't get had. It's I'm only seeing it in this sphere, and I'm only seeing it in this sphere, and I'm only seeing it in this sphere. So it's that conversation that has to be had. And here's the most important tip. If you were to ask me of one thing to make collaboration and decisions and stress and tension and conflict absolutely leave your relationship forever, it's separate that decision from the action. Don't do it all at once. So when you're having that conversation, the further that happens from the actual implementation, the better off you are, because it's actually always, if we're reacting to it, oh, the Thermomix is broke, we better buy a new Thermomix today. No. Okay, now we sit back, now we kind of think about it. Now, where's it going to sit? Where's it going to fit within the next month's plan? And how does it actually look, in comparison to what our sort of projection was for this year? Because we know it's going to have an impact. And maybe it's not as big as my initial fear was, but I need to know that too. But you also need to know that we're going to be pulling from Bali holiday, we're going to be pulling from kids fund, whatever it is, where it's coming from. And we can make that decision together. It's not, we just have to act. And look, that's the stuff that just creates stress and tension.
I just love that we're hooked on Thermomixes now. Paulie, I should have given you mine before I put it into storage, mate. You would have been the husband of the year. And I wouldn't have been. I would have been dethroned. But I want to change the direction of the conversation just a little bit. Terry, I'd love to dive into the 4 financial alter egos. I think how they influence our financial behaviors, firstly, what they are for everyone following along, listening along, and how they influence our behaviors.
Yeah, it's probably a good point to hit on, and Paul's been kind of mentioning it and touching on it, is, how are we collaborating with money? Because that's kind of the biggest unlock. If you're pulling in different directions, you just don't go fast. And I guess this is just an observation, this model. It's an observation in myself. It's an observation in all the members that we've worked with over time. And really it comes from the idea that how you feel about money dictates what you do with it, because the limbic part of your brain, it's what influence you. We make emotional decisions, then we justify them with logic, right? So if you understand how you unconsciously feel about money, then you can start to look at how you're acting with it, and you can start to codify this and understand, okay, when I'm reacting unconsciously around money, this is what I'm doing. This is where I'm going. This is how I'm acting. And I guess if you think about how you feel about money, there's 3 ways you can feel. You can loathe money, and that's like, I don't like it. I wish I didn't have to deal with it. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Get it away from me. That's one end of the spectrum or pendulum. On the other end of the pendulum, you can lust after money. And that is, I'm obsessed by money. I just have to have it. And it's just like something I cling to. All right. And in the middle of that, the more balanced, centered place is love. Now, when I say love, what I mean is it's the balanced kind of love you have for your partner, your son, your daughter. It's the acceptance of who you are. You and all your flaws. You're not perfect, but I accept you for who you are. Right. So that's a centered place. Now, map that against the 3 ways of being with money or doing. You can scrimp with money, you can save, or you can splurge. Right. So scrimping, obviously holding onto money very tightly. Saving is putting some away from the future, but also spending in line with what you value. Splurging, saving nothing for the future, spending everything on the now, and actually mortgaging the future for the now. And so if you map those against each other, what you're going to find is that we give money these 4 different jobs, and we don't even know that we give money these jobs. This is just completely unconscious. These are not conscious thoughts. These are unconscious feelings about what money has to do for us. And so the jobs are superiority, survival, security, and satisfaction. So if I give money the job of making me feel superior, then I'm going to see money as like some kind of moral compass. It says something about me. What I do with money says something about me. So maybe I'm going to spend a lot on symbols of prestige. Maybe I'm going to get the most expensive car. Maybe whatever it is, I'm going to try to signal something about how good I am. Maybe I'm giving money away all the time. Maybe I'm being overly generous in some ways, but the gift is always to me because I'm trying to create some kind of sort of story. And again, it's not a conscious thing. It's just an unconscious thing. And so that one there, these are all like financial alter ego. So if I give money the job of making me feel superior, I'll treat it like a moral compass and I'll use it as such. And I call that person a guilty giver. And you're either giving money to people who need it or you're giving money away to sort of create some kind of image. The second one is the resentful pauper, and that's the survival one. So if you give money the job of helping me, just help me survive, just help me get by, and you'll just see money as a basic necessity, and you won't even understand or consider that you could use money for other things like improving your life, like having fun, like investing in others. Anything like that won't come across, won't even register for you. And frequently you'll see people from lower socioeconomic status really struggle with this because they've never seen anything different. They've just seen people struggle. And you'll notice that people that, I guess, get out of those situations and continue to climb that sort of that ladder, I don't even know what the term is, but move themselves into situations where they're better off economically, they'll somehow get exposure to seeing other ways that money can be used. And so if you see money as just a basic necessity, then I would call that's that sort of resentful pauper. So this is just like money's just I just got to make it. I guess I've got to have it because we live in this world as a pain in the ass, but this is the lot we've been given. It's very, very hard for you to get beyond that if you only believe that money's job is just to help you survive. The other one is the fearful hoarder. So this is where I think a lot of men fall into this one because it's very gender-based. And it's where the job of money is security. Got to make me feel safe. Got to protect me. Got to protect my family. So you see money as like a sword and shield. And so you can see where spending conflict comes in, right? Because if you're living with someone who's splurging all the time, then it feels like they're putting you and your family at risk because you're like, that's the sword and shield. What are you doing? What are you throwing that away for? You know? And so you don't even know this is happening and you don't even know why you're disagreeing, but you're using the word money, but you're actually thinking about completely different things. And it's really, really important to understand that because wherever the conflict comes from, it's because your frame of reference is completely different. You're not even aware of it. And so you've got those 3. And then the last one is your exuberant shopper. So this one's all about satisfaction. So satisfy my desires, change my state internally. So my wife is the exuberant shopper. I'm the fearful hoarder, right? So I think money is a sword and shield if I'm unconsciously going to this place and under stress and pressure. But she thinks money's a drug. It's got to make you feel better. It's got to change your state. And so you can see how like this can go back and forth. She's like, this is what you're supposed to use money for. And I'm like, that's not what you use money for. You use money for this. And now if you just let that happen and you don't have the common cause, you don't have language to talk to. So for us, we know that that's where we go under stress and pressure. And we know that that's the unconscious job we've been giving, but it's just our conditioning. It's just our conditioning. The job of money isn't to be a sword and shield. It isn't to protect us, and it isn't to change our state. It's to improve our life. And we define that when we set that vision. So anytime we have some kind of disagreement, we just go back to the bigger picture and we say, it's not about this or that. It's about that. So what's going to help us get that?
Is it possible to change that conditioning?
It is, yeah, but you don't think your way into a new way of acting. You act your way into a new way of thinking. You do it through practice, right? It's the same as fitness. You change your identity over time through the repetition that you put in. You start to see yourself very, very differently. So, that conversation I just had with one of our newer members, her and her husband, completely different. And I said, your only job, your measure of success for the next 6 months is for you to get 6 reps in. 6 reps where you guys both go through this practice together. I guarantee that after 3, you're going to feel completely different. But if you get 6 in, the rest of your life is going to change, because that will be now a habit. It's a way of working you guys have established together. It's an operating rhythm that you have. And it's sticky, because once you do it, it just feels like, it's kind of like hygiene, right? Like, it's weird if you don't brush your teeth in the morning. Same thing.
And if it's not weird if you don't brush your teeth, then you need to...
You got some problems.
Yeah. It's that stanky breath.
You got bigger problems.
Yeah. Figuring that out. Gents, there was one actually other thing, and this is probably another little segue to the right as well, but the 3 layers of meaning when it comes to our money stories. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
I guess it's more just kind of understanding like where these jobs come from. How did you even get to this place where you've decided unconsciously that money's supposed to be a drug, money's supposed to be a sword and shield, money's supposed to be a basic necessity, or money's supposed to be a moral compass? How did you even get there? And the first one for me is like, everyone's got emotional imprints when it comes to money. So very early experiences, formative experiences you have with money, you'll find that they create meaning. You create a story, and that story gets reinforced over time. And so if you think about the first experience you ever had with money, you'll understand that, I don't mean like little bits of money that someone gave you here and there. I mean the first bit of money that you earned that was yours, that you got to use however you pleased. Now, that's a peak experience in your life, if you think about it, right? Because that's the first time you get to assert yourself. And that's the first time you get to be independent. And that's the first time you go, I get to decide what I'm going to do with this. Now, this is why people and couples in particular struggle coming together with money, because it feels like I'm going to be losing my independence, right? I don't want to do that because then someone else is going to tell me what to do with my money, and I don't want to go back to being a child. Completely irrational, but that's exactly how it feels. And so you're not looking to be, dependent on someone. You're actually looking to create interdependence. But that first layer of meaning, it comes with that sense of like, I'm an adult, I'm in charge, I get to do what I want type thing. And yeah, you can do what you want, but you'll always like never reach your potential as a couple if you stay independent and never get to interdependence. But so that's your first layer, right? And it's not just the peak experience the first time you had with money. It's also peak experiences that might have happened along the way. So I talk about this as a story that I only really recently understood, and it actually has to do with debt, interestingly enough. My relationship with money and debt and money itself was heavily influenced by one conversation I had with my dad, and I was 10 years old. I didn't even know about this until just recently. And he told me how he became a farmer. And he said, I was 15 years old and I was at school, and my dad turned up to school and he came into my classroom. He said, "Hey, pack your stuff. We're going home. I just took out $1 million debt, and your share is this much, and you got to work it off. You're a farmer now." And so how do you reckon that went with my relationship with debt? Debt's a bad thing.
Yeah, bugger that.
Debt is a prison. Debt is a prison. Debt is a prison. Now, I had to overcome that conditioning and actually educate myself out of that to better use the tool of debt, because debt, what Paul said before, is 100% spot on. The winners of the wealth game know how to use the weapon of debt, because it is a double-edged sword. And if you know how to wield it, you actually do pretty damn well, because you can handball the inflation problem to the banks, and you can actually get the powers of the economy and the way that the monetary system working for you, not against you. If you're trying to save, you can't save your way to wealth. You do need debt to be able to accelerate your savings. But yes, not on the home loan, preferably. You want that moving against your investments. So anyway, so that's your first layer of meaning, right? Your peak experiences. And was it good? Was it bad? And what sort of meaning did you make from that? Your second layer of meaning is like your gender roles. You talked before about like you being the saver. I'm sure I'd say most men see themselves as savers because you think it's your role to provide security and protect the family and that sort of thing. And those two roles, there's like provider and carer. And it's supposed to be provider protects and, looks after things and carer sort of nurtures. Now, inherently, those two roles are pitted against each other because if you're the carer who's going to be looking after each other's needs, then you need to be using and spending money to make it happen. That's the way the world works. But if you think you're the provider and you're not a carer, then you think your job is to stack as much money as possible because then everyone's safer, right? And so you're stacking money, the other person's spending it, and you're like, what are you doing? And you're not across it. And so you kind of come into conflict with that. So that's your second layer. Your third layer is your actual personal values. What do you actually care about for yourself? What's important to you? And if those values are different and you don't actually reconcile those differences and make them common, you can just see, this person just going in their own direction. So those three layers, they actually create those financial alter egos. And it's kind of unconsciously driving you, if that makes sense. It's like you're just like on these train tracks and you can't get off them if you're not aware of it.
Love it, gentlemen. Well, in respect for everyone's time, I just want to make sure everyone can find out where they can get in contact with you guys. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, this is literally just scratching the surface. Terry's got a podcast, Cashflow Co. You've got courses. Terry, where can everyone find the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate having me on. And thanks, Paul, for introducing us. I really like this conversation. And I think what you guys are doing too, just these kind of conversations is... it's really valuable, I think, for men at the moment. I see a lot of men struggling in this space, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk to it. So, where can people find more about us? So, our podcast is the Passive Income Project. Yeah, that's okay. But that's literally, we give away as much as we can on there. Like literally everything we teach is on there. Nothing's held back from that. But if you do need help and you want our help, then the Cashflow Co is our business, and you can just go to cashflowco.com.au and you'll find everything you need from us there.
I'll have that link in the show notes for everyone to just click very easily. And Paulie Hickson, mate, where can people find you?
We're Loan Market in New Farm. We've been around a long time. Obviously, we look after a lot of your guys as well as a lot of local people. So Loan Market in New Farm. And we're happy to help whoever needs some help with their lending.
Awesome. Well, Terry and Paul, thank you guys so much for giving your time. I've taken away so much more from this as well, and I've got questions that I'm going to go ponder and listen to the podcast and obviously have some more conversations with the wife. But I do believe the work that you're both doing and the care that you genuinely have, Paul, Terry, to your point as well, there are a lot of men struggling out there, and financial pressures is one of the biggest reasons why men take their life by suicide. So I think it's a skill we can learn to develop and improve to better improve our relationships and our quality of life. So gents, invest some time in there, and you can be on the path to continuing improving who you are and the outcomes that you get for your life.
Thanks, Lachie. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachie Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.